Now, Speaker McCarthy, in order to become Speaker, had to cut some deals we still don't know the details on. Do you think he's actually running his caucus, or do you think someone else is?
He's not. I don't.
Who's running it?
I think you've got Marjorie Taylor Greene running the caucus. I mean, and she makes very common public statements to that effect. Every time something irks her, she communicates that McCarthy is doing her bidding. And I think that this is something that is quite clear. I think that Speaker McCarthy is stuck between having to please the most racist and heinous elements of his party with having to maintain a majority. And he is choosing to side with the extremists.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about what is probably the most piss poor example of journalism that I've ever seen in my life, because the mainstream liberal media claims up and down that Fox News is fake news, right? They're propaganda for the Republican Party. But this interview right here between Jen Psaki and AOC, in my opinion, is probably the worst kind of journalism, where you have Jen Psaki, who worked for the Biden administration. She's a Democrat, interviewing AOC, who's also a Democrat, and just completely dropping the ball in regards to asking AOC real questions. Okay, it was a boot-looking interview if I've ever seen one. Okay, so I want to talk about a few segments here in which Jen Psaki just allows AOC to make silly claims without asking a follow-up question to make her support and back up her claims or even pushing back. So the first clip here that I want to play is Jen Psaki allowing AOC to make the claim that Republicans somehow are taking away people's rights when it comes to gay marriage or interracial marriage and other wild claims as well. Take a look.
We are seeing is a concerted rollback of civil liberties in general. Our right to privacy, our right to bodily autonomy, our right to marry whomever we wish to marry. All of this is at risk. I do not think they will stop. And just as we warned about Roe, we are warning about the very real risks. And we're already seeing the attacks on trans Americans. We are seeing the attacks on LGBT Americans. We have even seen Republican members of the Senate insinuate that interracial marriage is something that should be up for debate. These are our civil rights and our civil liberties, and we have to resist. We must resist these attempts to roll back the basic human rights of certain communities of Americans based on identity.
This week, Fox News settled.
Yeah, so I included the part in there after AOC finished her garbage accusations, her untrue accusations, her false claims, where Jen Psaki says, well, this week, Fox News, again, you see how she didn't address, okay, let's dig deeper into these claims, right? Because you're making some very, very, very serious accusations when you accuse your political opponents of, quote unquote, attacking the trans community, attacking the LGBT community, wanting to roll back interracial marriage and gay marriage as well, too. These are some very, very, very serious claims that we know if Republicans make any of these types of claims against Democrats, you know what's coming. A follow-up question to prove or just flat out push back against what that person's saying. But Jen Psaki doesn't think to say, hey, you know, what do you mean by attack on LGBTQ and trans people? What specifically is the GOP doing that is an attack on LGBTQ and trans people? And the reason why I wish that they would ask this question, they never will, is because if you actually ask these Democrats to explain what is an attack on LGBTQ and trans people, then they'll have to actually get into the conversation about what's in the legislation, right? For example, they'll have to talk about how Republicans are basically not allowing kids to have conversations with teachers about sex in school, or how Republicans don't want kids to be exposed to male strippers, or how Republicans don't want biological boys and girls competing against sports. Issues that a vast majority of American people, in my opinion, the ones with common sense, again, that's a rapidly shrinking population in this country, but I still hope and believe that most Americans have common sense, would agree that, yeah, you know what, this actually sounds about right, right? This sounds like something that we should be doing, okay? Or we shouldn't be allowing kids to be exposed to this type of stuff. But see, the mainstream liberal media will never ask these questions. They will never frame it that way because they know that this is a losing issue for them. So they just allow Democrats to make these silly claims. They never actually get into what exactly the Republicans do. And they just say, oh, it's just an attack on LGBTQ people. Okay, well, what is the attack? Well, you're not allowing biological boys to compete against biological girls in sports. Or you're not allowing explicit adult content in school for kids. Again, that doesn't sound like something that's going to be very popular, right? When you actually tell people what's in the legislation. What are the Republicans actually doing? Again, it's amazing how that works, right? So now we got to move on to the next part of the interview where Jen Psaki allows AOC to basically call for unconstitutional censorship of political opponents because apparently a difference of political opinions that she doesn't agree with, are violence, right? They're calls to violence because they're opinions that she does not agree with politically. Take a look.
I believe that we leave to the courts to solve issues that politics is really supposed to solve, that our legislating is supposed to solve. We have very real issues with what is permissible on air, and we saw that with January 6th, and we saw that in the lead up to January 6th, and how we navigate questions not just of freedom of speech, but also accountability for incitement of violence. This is the line that we have to really explore through law as well. And
do you think media organizations or social media platforms should be accountable for the role for being platforms for incitement?
I believe that when it comes to broadcast television, like Fox News, these are subject to federal law, federal regulation in terms of what's allowed on air and what isn't. And when you look at what Tucker Carlson and some of these other folks on Fox do, it is very, very clearly incitement of violence. Very clearly incitement of violence. And that is the line that I think we have to be willing to contend with.
Jim Jordan, your friend and mine.
Yeah. So again, what will we have here? Again, I'm showing you guys how Jen Psaki follows up. Okay, this is a world-class example of journalism, right? This is what the mainstream liberal media tell you. This is journalism right here. Okay, she allows AOC to basically advocate for the federal government to censor speech that she does not like politically, right? Because she defines it as incitement of violence. So she doesn't ask AOC, okay, what is an example of something that Tucker Carlson has said or something that's been broadcast on Fox News that you would define as incitement of violence, right? Can you give us an example of what is a quote or something that Tucker said that you feel like is incitement of violence? No. She doesn't ask this follow-up. Jim Jordan, right? Let's move on to the next subject. Again, what's the point? I don't understand. They just allow Democrats to say whatever. Because a real journalist, okay, you don't necessarily have to push back, but you got to ask questions that, you know, it keeps the politicians consistent, right? Like, for example, I would ask AOC, okay, so by that same standard, do you believe that you should be censored because you supported the BLM protests, which were violent? Okay, we know for a fact they were violent. They were the most expensive riots in history, political riots in history. You also supported the Roe v. Wade rioters as well, too, who have bombed abortion centers. They have threatened to assassinate Supreme Court justices. In fact, there was an assassination attempt. They have also stalked, harassed Supreme Court justices at their house as well, too. Do you condone these activities? Do you think that this is right? Do you support these rioters, these protesters, and what they're doing? And how is you supporting them any different than what Tucker Carlson has said? Like, how do you define the difference there, right? Like, how is what you're doing right and Tucker Carlson doing wrong? Because it seems like by your own definition, you should be censored, right? You should be censored for inciting violence. I'm just saying, I mean, I would love to see AOC answer that question, right? I would love to see her try to figure out what is the difference between the violence on the left and the violence on the right. And I would love to see her articulate that. But again, they will never ask questions like that. They will never ask questions like that. And if you guys need more proof that this was nothing but a softball, right? This was a boot-licking fest or a heel-licking fest, whatever you want to call it, between Jen Psaki and AOC. I want you guys to listen to this Q&A about climate change and the Green New Deal. Take a look.
There are a lot of myths and misinformation about the Green New Deal out there. You may like even more than I do disputing disinformation, and I like it quite a bit. But let's go through some of these. Former President Donald Trump has said that in the Green New Deal, you're, quote, not allowed to own cows anymore.
You know, I wish Donald Trump had read legislation while he was president. Clearly, he hasn't read this. It is absolutely not true. In fact, we discuss a lot about renewable agriculture and having proactive investments for small farmers across the country.
So cows are allowed, just to be clear.
Cows are totally allowed.
Cows are allowed.
Ranchers and are going to be a very important partner in addressing this.
Green New Deal, Ocasio-Cortez aims to make air travel obsolete, aid those unwilling to work. That's a lot in a headline.
Yeah.
But what do you say to that?
Well, I represent LaGuardia Airport, and we stand with especially our flight attendants unions and our airline workers a lot. And really, it truly is the climate crisis itself that threatens airline travel with increasing storms and flooding airports. It really is posing a very large threat to our airline industry and infrastructure. So this is actually the opposite. we have to make sure that we're making the investments necessary so that we're helping folks.
And Trump said that the Green New Deal is going to ban cows. What do you think about that, AOC?
Bruh. Wow. Amazing. Again, it's funny because Jen Psaki here clearly is showing her political bias, right? Clearly, she's a far left progressive. She agrees with AOC on basically everything, okay? And she's not asking real questions to AOC about the Green New Deal and climate change. Like, for example, AOC's claims that the world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change. Take a look.
Millennials and people and, Gen Z and all these folks that come after us are looking up, and we're like, the world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change. And your biggest issue is your biggest issue is how are we going to pay for it?
Yeah. Let's spend $50 trillion, okay, so that the world doesn't end in 12 years. And the so-called disinformation expert, Jen Psaki, did not think to ask AOC about what I believe is probably the biggest piece of disinformation you can put out there, which is that the world is going to end in 12 years if we don't do something about climate change. Again, no evidence whatsoever to support a claim like that. But AOC made that claim, and Jen Psaki, again, who claims to be a disinformation expert, would rather talk with AOC about Trump, claiming that the Green New Deal is going to ban cows, rather than a much bigger piece of disinformation or just flat out lie, which is that the world is going to end in 12 years, essentially, if we don't get the Green New Deal, right? Again, this is what they are pitching as world-class journalism, okay, from MSNBC, okay? This ass-kissing fest between Jen Psaki and AOC. Again, this is pathetic, right? This is absolutely pathetic. But hey, MSNBC is going to try their best to make something out of Jen Psaki, right? They paid a lot of money for Joe Biden's propaganda mouthpiece, and they're going to try their best to market her. I'm not sure if she's going to be successful. Okay, she doesn't seem to be particularly interesting person to listen to, especially, again, if she's not going to be pushing back, asking tough questions. If she's going to be softballing it like this, yeah, I don't think she's going to be very successful. And this is why the public in general has such a low approval rating of the media and journalism. It's because this right here is what they are peddling as an example of good journalism, right? Interviews like this, ass-kissing fest between Democrat Party propagandists and politicians in the media. Again, it's a shame. It really is. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.